about smart cities being livable. We talked about them being sustainable. We talked about them being economically able. So we talked about livability. We talked about livability. Then we talked about economic ability. And we talked about sustainability. Now, the director of NICU says that a certain Mr. Vidya, it's not important who says what, but it is important to know that the last urban studies for India happened in the year 1982. And after that, no concrete steps have been taken to understand the process of urbanization, resulting in what is called now fragmented organic growth. Now, what means by fragmented organic growth is that कोई भी चीज कहीं भी आ गई है, मतलब कोई there is no concept of town planning. There is no concept of town planning. As a result of which, towns and cities and metros have just mushroomed out of proportion without taking into consideration where and what facilities are required. So, how much of water facility is required? What is the electricity requirement of a region? What is the housing capacity of that region? Has not been mapped or planned, taking the density of population of that area in mind. And the failure lies with what is called the urban local bodies. The failure lies with the urban local bodies. The paper suggests that the urban local bodies have not been trained enough, empowered enough, not given the devolution of power so that they can decide what is to be done. So like yesterday, I told you that one of the biggest lacunas in the smart cities concept was the special purpose vehicle, which was reporting to the standing steering committee of the state, as a result of which the center had no idea about the manner in which the implementation was going to take place. So when we are making our cities livable, economically able and sustainable, we are looking at it to provide what is called safe water, safe streets, public spaces, good public transport, facilities for health, education, and places for recreation. It is decided that the economic opportunity should increase and keep up with the demand and supply of that region, and at the same time be able to control adverse climatic conditions like rising temperatures, extreme weather events, bad air quality, flood, drought, and loss of urban diversity. मतलब ऐसा कुछ नहीं है जो आपने सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट में पढ़ा हो जिसको कि आप यहाँ पे नहीं लिख सकते हैं. बस आपको क्या ध्यान में रखना है कि सारे पॉइंट्स आपको याद आने चाहिए. मतलब आप अगर आप टाउन प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं तो आपको राइजिंग टेम्परेचर्स, एयर पोल्यूशन, treatment of waste and sewage, proper control for extreme weather conditions, and at the same time loss of urban diversity. और आपको वहां पे क्या चीज की आवश्यकता है? सबसे ज्यादा पानी की, बिजली की, रहने की आवश्यकता, आपको एजुकेशन की आवश्यकता और आपके हेल्थ की आवश्यकता. अगर ये 5-6 चीजें आप याद रखेंगे तो आप कभी भी अर्बन प्लानिंग में गलत नहीं हो पाएंगे. अब जब ये स्मार्ट सिटीज का कॉन्सेप्ट 2015 में चला तो इसको कंप्लीट हो जाना था. It was said that this project ought to have been completed in 2020, but we were hit by the pandemic, and so therefore the extension period given is to 2023. In the budget of 21-22, I'm talking of the previous budget, there was a V-turn by the government in terms of urban spending. When we say there was a V-turn, meaning there was more spent on urban planning in 21-22. For 22-23, what are the various allocations for the schemes? I will just talk to you in a little bit. Uh, it is an increase, but the idea is not of increase in budget allocation. Vaidya's paper, an article which has come out in the Hindu on December 21st, 2021, followed by another article in the Economic Times, which is of 22nd February 2022, which highlights the fact that the amount of expenditure which is there is not being properly absorbed by the urban bodies or is not going into planning the right way. Reason being, there is a lack of foresight of how to utilize the resources. So, in fact, in the article of Economic Times, it's very clearly stated that the center and state have not come together in terms of smart city missions. In fact, it has been collaborated and it has been stated very clearly that there is a deficit of 6,000. There is a deficit of 6,286 6,258 crores in terms of spending between the center and state as on February 2022. तो ऐसा कहा गया कि center has spent so far 27,282 crores and the states have spent so far 21,024 crores. So there is a gap of 6,258 crores between the state and the center, which highlights the fact that the state has not come up with its matching funding, which had been suggested in the smart cities mission. Now, when this happens, which are the biggest defaulters? Then they have taken the name of तेलंगाना. तेलंगाना ने अभी तक उसके दो cities थे इसके अंडर. One is Warangal and the other is करीमगीर. ये एग्जाम्पल डालना आपके लिए जरूरी है क्योंकि आप कहीं लिख दीजिएगा जहां पर कि why the smart cities mission has not taken up or is not moving forward at the pace at which it should. One is that. The other, they could ask you, what do you feel should be the input so that the smart cities mission takes off in a developing country like India? Then all these things will come into it. That the special purpose vehicle should be answerable to have the center as well as the state. That's one. The second, the point which I mentioned earlier, that the urban local bodies need to be empowered enough to take decisions, to be able to plan. The fact that there has been no urban surveys and no planning done since 1982 is the biggest lacuna that we are facing as on date. These are some of the drawbacks which we need to highlight. So when there is no matching provision of funds between the center and the state, it amounts to the fact that there can be a shortage of funds, which is not the case. The case is that the funds are not coming at the right time for utilization, and whenever they are being provided, the state really doesn't know what to do. Now, I already told you yesterday that somewhere along the line, the concept of smart cities, despite their having open discussions, despite them having a digital platform where the views of the people are being taken, it is said that ultimately in the smart cities program, the decision is being taken by a handful of state government employees, the bureaucracy, and some enlightened and expert people from the field who really do not know what is needed and when. And since they do not know that, this is not taking off well. But wherever there has been a citizens' participation, the smart cities mission is doing well. And we can give you examples of Pune, where there are Prabhat committees which are working along with the councillors and the ward nominees in a particular area and have been responsible for certain green projects, for making tracks for cycling, and also providing for subways. Then again in Chennai, the people have come forward and the NGOs are making a lot of bunds and trying to control the flooding which takes place in certain areas. So they are creating artificial ponds or water bodies so that the flood water can be controlled. Then they have mentioned, the paper mentions the city of Bangalore, where people and citizens are involved in reviving the old water bodies which have been full of now the growth of water hyphens and other things which have led to the killing of the water body in the first place. So these are the good examples which have been given. The paper further goes on to say that in cities like Bhopal, Ahmedabad, Thane are going out in a big way to provide sustainable housing to the people. Now, when you provide sustainable housing to the people, you are taking care of those slums which appear on the fringes of the big cities. So, town planning into them, to such cities, include providing free housing or housing at very low cost. So some of the cities like Thane has inbuilt 1,000 crore rupees only for slum development, and they are doing very good work about it. Ultimately, it is said that if we want to really improve the smart cities mission, or we want to make the growth of urbanization into a smooth transition, then the first and foremost thing we should realize is that it needs to be planned well. It needs to be planned well. If we don't plan well, then the urban local bodies will not be able to utilize the fund which is being given to them. That the process has to be more democratic. That there has to be a spatial spread of growth in cities, and that it cannot be a spatial spread of growth. It cannot be like the growth of mushrooms or the mushrooming of towns and cities, where the small towns are just working like marketplaces for the rural areas. So if you look at the growth of cities, it's like you have towns, then you have cities, then you have some bigger cities, and you have metros, right? Now, the transition, of course, and we're starting here from the villages. Now, the transition from here to here should be very smooth. It shouldn't be like you're being pushed out of the process here, and that you ultimately burden the metros, because that's the only place where you are finding some kind of stability in terms of supply of water, electricity, and most important, employment. So the paper says that we need to concentrate, and this is what has happened in the budget of 21-22. In the budget of 21-22, they have enhanced the scope of Amrut. Amrut क्या है? आपकी अटल बिहारी योजना जो है फॉर हाउसिंग, फॉर अर्बन डेवलपमेंट, उसके अंतर्गत इन्होंने क्या कहा है कि they are going to take 4,000 more towns and cities, 4,000 plus more towns and cities which have a population of up to 1 lakh or between 25,000 to 50,000, so that they can take an overall view of development. One of the complaints of the urban local bodies is that the money which comes under the scheme for urban development from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development is first taken by the bigger cities, and there's very little left for the small towns. So they say that if you give us the right amount of money at the right time, even we can grow. It is important that during the COVID time, it was realized that even the smaller towns had lower death rates as compared to the metros and other places. What does that point to? Of course, the fact remains that these had a higher density of population, but it also means that they were managed well enough, that these towns and cities were managed well enough to be able to come under the scope of further development to prevent overcrowding in the metros and in the bigger cities. So logically, people should have a free movement from one place to another, go to work to a particular city, come back and stay in smaller towns, and that movement should be seamless. It shouldn't be like you are being forced from one place to another because you do not have a choice. This was one thing which I wanted to point. So now we know that there is a lack of fund availability, inequality between the center and the state, and that the states have not done their bit while having during the Smart Cities Mission program. Now, what are the schemes which have been entailed in the Smart Cities program, and what are the patterns of growth in the budget of 2022, 22-23, which I just like to mention and about it, and that's it, and we are done with this. So there is what is called the Amrut, और अमृत भी 2015 में लॉन्च हुआ था. अब अमृत में क्या है? अमृत में आपका है अटल मिशन फॉर rejuvenation, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. तो अमृत काल में आपको अमृत पाना है. For everything now there is an Amrut Kal according to this, because we have entered into the 75th year of our independence. Till now, till the next 25 years, we are in that Amrut Kal. I tried to Google and find out what is Amrut Kal. It seems like any auspicious time. To me, an auspicious time would be early in the morning. But for this present government, the auspicious Kal is any time, any day. Okay, so whatever they are doing, they will do with aplomb and give it a good name, something very catchy. So if something fails, you can fall back on another concept. So that is why I said yesterday, is it old wine in new bottles? And this is what I meant, because one of the criticisms against the Smart Cities mission is that there is just some kind of jostling between Amrut and the Smart Cities mission. They say that actually one is submerged under the other, but let's now, for the time being, just let's keep it a little separate and say, yes, these are schemes which are now subsumed under. All these schemes are subsumed under the Smart City Mission. That is all that you need to remember. So Amrut Kal mein aap Amrut पाएंगे through Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. अब इनकी urban transportation की इनकी highlights हैं. Just to mention, there are 5 things which they concentrate on. One, of course, is capacity building. So one thing that this scheme does is capacity building. ये अपना पैसा लगाते हैं capacity building में under this scheme. The other, of course, is reform implementation. Reform implementation. Then they do water supply and management. Water supply and management of sewage. Then they do what is called something in improvement in urban transportation. Improvement in urban transport facilities. Then the development of green spaces. So these are some of the things which are happening under the Amrut. The other part which they have said, other than Amrut, so first Amrut हो गया, second हो गया आपका हृदय. अब हृदय क्या है? और हृदय का परिवर्तन बिल्कुल भी नहीं होना चाहिए. इसलिए you have what is called the National Heritage City Development and Augmentation. इसमें जो cities जिनका एक historical या cultural background है, like for example Hampi, like for example Karamgiri and Agra, all these places are being taken up under the Hriday scheme. In the Hriday scheme, you have a heritage city development, a national heritage city development and augmentation, जिसमें वो इस theme के ऊपर और इनके जितनी भी areas of historical importance है वहां को रीडेवलप करते हैं, but they did something very tacky for that Jallianwala Bagh, where they put these plastic lights and all. It was really, if you read the papers, you must have read about how much of criticism it has come under. And that has been done, of course, under Hriday scheme. Anyways, so that smart cities mission should have a broader picture, and people should agree whether they wanted those plastic tacky lights near our Jallianwala Bagh, but now that it has been done. So that's just for your information, but a lot of development is taking place for these cities. Then they speak of what is called Digital India scheme. जो आपकी डिजिटल इंडिया है वो भी इसके अंदर सबस्यूम की जा सकती है, और आपका स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, आपका स्वच्छ भारत मिशन जो है अब वो पार्ट 2 में चला गया. स्वच्छ भारत मिशन हैज कम अंडर पार्ट 2. तो स्वच्छ भारत मिशन इज ऑल्सो सबस्यूम्ड अंडर दिस स्कीम. और पीएम की आवास योजना, पीएम की आवास योजना, ये सब स्मार्ट सिटी के अंडर सबस्यूम्ड है. तो आप जब भी बात करेंगे स्मार्ट सिटीज के बारे में, तो आप अमृत, हृदय, डिजिटल इंडिया, स्वच्छ भारत मिशन एंड पीएम आवास योजना के बारे में भी जिक्र करेंगे जरूर से. और जिक्र करते वक्त आपको क्या क्या बताना है? You need to emphasize and let them know that in September 2020, along with the Smart Cities mission, the government came up with what is called as the Climate Assessment Framework. अब इसको इन्होंने क्या कह दिया? Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework. ये हिंदू वाली लिंक में है आर्टिकल में. I will share the link with you, तो आप लोग वहां से भी पढ़ सकते हैं. Don't get confused by it. In September 2020, the government has come up with what is called as the Smart Cities Assessment Framework, Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework, in which they have said that the streets of the people. Now, this is just kind of a catchy phrase, but the sum total of it is that in your urban planning, or when you are talking of urban planning, you have to think about the man on the road and how you can make life easy for that person. So you should have cycle tracks for him, non-motorable routes should be provided for him, or say you should give him safe spaces to move around. So in terms of sustainable development and in terms of our goals for COP26, this is now a new word which has come up, and they're saying that the Smart Cities mission should be subsumed under this kind of a climate assessment framework, जिसमें उन्होंने दो बातें कही हैं कि जो पेडेस्ट्रियन होता है उसके लिए आपको नॉन मोटराइज्ड रोड्स बनाने की कोशिश करनी चाहिए. अब अगर आपको इसमें थोड़ा सा और एग्जांपल दूं कि वेयर आर द प्रॉब्लम्स अराइजिंग फ्रॉम in terms of smart city, let us take the example of Tamil Nadu. I just told you that in Tamil Nadu, they are trying to recreate water bodies to enable them to be able to control floods. Now, Tamil Nadu is considered to be one of the most urbanly developed states of India, and it took under the Smart Cities mission 11 cities. उसमें से इस 11 सिटी में it has spent about 15,307 crores. 15,307 crores. It tried to develop an area near Pondi Bazaar in Chennai, जहां पे इन्होंने क्योंकि यहाँ बहुत भीड़ होती थी, तो इन्होंने यहाँ पर एक स्काई वॉक क्रिएट किया. अब स्काई वॉक तो क्रिएट कर दिया, बट यहाँ के जो ड्रेनेज पैटर्न था उसको इग्नोर किया गया. The drainage pattern was ignored, due to which when there was an onslaught of rain, if you remember that in November 2021, there was massive flooding in Chennai. And in this region, because of a lack of proper drainage pattern, the whole area got submerged in water. So this construction of the skywalk came under a lot of criticism. If you come to Mumbai, you will see such glaring examples of local money being wasted because of lack of planning. So many skywalks were created at one point of time. I'm just talking of a few years back, which are of no use, and the city continues to reel under the pressures of excessive flooding during the monsoons. And we are going to enter into the monsoons in a few months' time, and you will be facing all of this and hearing about this all over again. The reason being that there is a lack of foresight and planning, and that the various departments in the state government themselves are not coming up with an urban plan. So when the administrator of that region comes up and proposes something, all people move forward to create that. So if it's a skywalk, so the local contractor comes in and says, okay, this much of money, and that is put together, and a plan is just sketched around and made. How much of vehicular traffic gets affected by that? There are so many blocks for so many days. One side of the road is only used, and there's a lot of wastage of petrol and a lot of wastage of valuable time for the citizens of the city. But this is being ignored. So this is what it is being said, that if we have to look at smart cities, we should first one have a plan. We should involve the urban local bodies, empower them enough, give them funds available, make it available at the right time. And if we suddenly pour them with funds without a plan, the money is not going to be spent anywhere. So this kind of a planning will not result in any kind of smart cities. And this is what is getting reflected time and again in all the newspaper articles that I had a chance to read before making this presentation for you. Now, just one more thing I want to add for today is what is there in this year's budget for smart cities. So they are saying that for in budget 2022, 23, budget 22, 23, they are saying that they will talk about modernization of building bylaws. मॉडर्नाइजेशन ऑफ बिल्डिंग बायलॉज, पहला तो इन्होंने ये कहा है, फिर दूसरा इन्होंने कहा है इम्प्लीमेंटिंग टाउन प्लानिंग. आई डोंट नो व्हाई दे इंक्लूडेड इट, बिकॉज अभी भी हम टाउन प्लानिंग कर रहे थे और फिर भी करेंगे, पर अब ये कह रहे हैं कि अभी तक हम प्लानिंग ही कर रहे थे, इस बार हम इम्प्लीमेंट भी करेंगे. Okay, anyways, that's besides the point. So they're going to implement town planning. And the third thing they talk about is what is called, they are going to have transit oriented development. They say that they are going to have something which is called as transit oriented development. Now, I really tried to find out what is this transit oriented development, क्योंकि पहले जब ये कह रहे थे, जब ये स्मार्ट सिटीज के बारे में बता रहे थे, तो एक बात बार बार निकल के आ रही थी, that at least one smart solution should be implemented in all the cities. And this has been propagated. If you remember, I had spoken about it when we started our lecture on smart cities, that at least one idea of a smart city should be implemented in all. And otherwise, the area or development program was कि एक area development होगा, जिस area को आप develop करना चाहेंगे, उसको आप कैसे कैसे कर सकते हैं develop, either through retrofitting, मतलब जो exist कर रहा है उसी को थोड़ा सा आप ठीक कर दीजिए, या तो आप redevelop करिए, और या तो आप ग्रीन स्पेसेस को या ग्रीन फील्ड करिए. किसी भी एरिया में ग्रीन फील्ड का मतलब होता है स्टार्टिंग अफ्रेश और स्टार्टिंग अन्यू. सो दिस वुड मीन दैट यू absolutely start again. Retrofit would just put whatever is available into a proper order, and redevelopment would mean going in for some kind of structural changes. But now the budget talks about a transit-oriented development. In my viewpoint, I try to find out what is it. If I'm able to find out, I will share in the group with you. But for me, a transit-oriented development would mean something which can be changed easily. So that kind of a transit-oriented development is spoken of. Then they talk about, because we're talking about e-vehicles, they are saying that instead of having charging points for e-vehicles, they would rather prefer to have swapping of batteries being placed from one place to another. तो पहले तो ये बात कर रहे थे कि ये चार्जिंग पॉइंट्स हर पेट्रोल पंप पे आप देखेंगे अभी ई व्हीकल्स के लिए चार्जिंग पॉइंट्स अवेलेबल करा दिए गए हैं. But I don't know about other cities, but it has happened in Mumbai. But this budget talks about swapping it with a policy for alternative setting up of charging stations in urban areas. They are going to provide a battery swapping policy. They say they are going to provide you with a battery swapping policy. They are saying that you'll provide you with a battery swapping policy. इसके अतिरिक्त इस वाले बजट में कहा गया है कि हर घर नल से जल, हर घर नल से जल, जिसके लिए कहा जा रहा है कि 60,000 करोड़ हम स्पेंड करेंगे और इस 60,000 करोड़ द्वारा हम 3.8 करोड़ हाउस होल्ड में नल द्वारा जल प्रोवाइड करेंगे. We are going to be able to provide 3.8 crore households. This is crore. 3.8 crore household after an outlay of 60,000 under the scheme of Har Ghar Nal Se Jal. Then the other thing they talk about is that under the PM Awas Yojana, और क्योंकि ये subsumed है, 5 schemes subsumed है under the Smart Cities program. Don't forget, PM Awas Yojana. इसमें इन्होंने allocation किया है 48,000 करोड़ का, और इस 48,000 करोड़ से ये कहते हैं कि ये 80 लाख घर बनाएंगे. They are going to be, there's a provision of 48,000 crores on the PM Awas Yojana from which they claim they are going to make 80 lakh houses. And these are the other two statistics which I would like to tell you. Other than that, of course, they are talking about a lot of e-bill systems, and they're going to be making you with an e-passport. So that is all to deal with what is called smart cities by e-governance. That digital part I told you about inclusive growth earlier. Now, if you look at the smart cities mission, it can be subsumed under inclusivity and sustainability. So when you become inclusive, what do? When you become inclusive, you provide people with house, food, water, sanitation, isn't it? These are some of the things we have talked about when we said that we need to get into an inclusive mode of an economy. So how is this going to be? So they say that when you're going to provide housing to the people under the PM Awas Yojana, then it is going to have a spin-off effect. किस प्रकार से spin-off effect होगा? ये कहते हैं कि 1:8 के रेशियो में आपको पहले 1:6 के रेशियो में आपको इन्वेस्टमेंट मिलेगा पीएम की आवास योजना में. आप घर बनाएंगे तो कोई तो आएगा उस टेंडर को लेने के लिए और उसमें पैसे डालेगा और वो घर बनाएगा. तो 1:6 के रेशियो में आपको इन्वेस्टमेंट मिलेगा. फिर 1:8 के रेशियो में आपको उससे एम्प्लॉयमेंट मिलेगा. अब जब ये आपको एम्प्लॉयमेंट मिलेगा तो आपकी इकोनॉमी ग्रो करेगी. और आपको और किस चीज का बेनिफिट मिलेगा? आप जब हाउसिंग बनाएंगे तो हाउसिंग जो हाउस टैक्स होता है, इट इज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट कंपोनेंट. हाउस टैक्स इज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट कंपोनेंट ऑफ इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस. So house tax actually contributes 12% to the indirect taxes. It's a 12% share in indirect taxes. तो कहते हैं अगर आप पीएम आवास योजना के द्वारा घर बनाएंगे तो घर बनाते वक्त आपको स्पिन ऑफ में इतनी सारी चीजें मिलेंगी। और घर बनाने से पहले आप बैंक का इंटरेस्ट रेट भी कम कर देंगे, उसको भी आप रिड्यूस कर देंगे। अगर जैसे ही आप बैंक का इंटरेस्ट रेट रिड्यूस करेंगे, लोगों की परचेसिंग पावर बढ़ेगी। इस प्रकार से इंक्लूसिव ग्रोथ का जनरेशन होगा। दैट इज द पॉलिसी बिहाइंड द पीएम आवास योजना, and that is also the policy behind any development policy, but they have made this kind of a breakup for the housing part of it because it leads to further economic development. जब आप कहते हैं कि cyclic we need a cyclic economy, ये cyclic economy कहाँ पे आ रही है? This budget also talks about a cyclic economy. What is a cyclic economy? Is nothing but your waste management and its usage for employment generation. तो जैसे ही आप सॉलिड वेस्ट या आपका जितना पुरानी कार्स है या जो भी आपके पास है, whatever you have in junk, when a proper system of waste management is developed in the economy to give you a spin-off effect in terms of employment generation, it is said you have entered what is called as the cyclic economy. और ये बजट कहता है कि हम अब इस प्रकार के बायोमास पेलेट्स बनाएंगे जो हम थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स पे जाएंगे, डालेंगे, जिससे आपका जो CO2 का एमिशन है वो भी कम होगा और इससे एक्स्ट्रा इनकम भी जनरेट होगी। सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी या जो मैं साइक्लिक इकोनॉमी की आपको बात कर रही हूँ is expected to help in productivity enhancement as well as creating new business opportunities, जहां पे कि electronic waste, end of life vehicles, used oil waste, toxic and hazardous industrial wastes are ready to go into this kind of circular economy where the waste generation or the waste which is generated is going to be put to use to generate employment and as well as at the same time to reduce the waste which is there in the environment. So with that, I think I have brought an end to Smart Cities mission. Now we have two topics left so far as the environment part is concerned. One is your pollution and one is your waste management. I will start off with pollution first and then go into waste management. There are a lot of questions on pollution. You can read that. If there's something about smart cities which you've not understood, which I don't believe you wouldn't have, because it's a very simple concept, I have brought it forward only because of certain things which were announced in the budget and I felt that it had become important. For other schemes, I have not given you the breakup because I think by the time you go in for writing the main exam, maybe you will then need fresh data on that, which we will provide. So I would like to end this class here. If you had given me 35 minutes yesterday, we could have finished the class yesterday, but that is all from me now. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.